Hi everybody, welcome to today's episode of ENTA Asks. I am Kevin McEachran, I'm filling in for Caitlin Bullock, and this is Adam Colazetti. Adam, what do we have going on today?
Oh, it's a super exciting episode today. We have Mexsig Construction on set, and they're going to talk to us about literally how they wrote the book on construction.
Literally.
Okay, here we go. We have a super exciting episode for you here today. We're going to talk construction and building stuff and getting large groups of people to work together to create something super cool. So with us today, we have Sigfrido Pacheco-Vega, who is the president of Mexsig Construction. And we have Brenda Pacheco-Vega, who is the general manager. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we need to talk about the tale of two cities. You've got a great story about Chestermere and Calgary, and I'm going to hand it over to you because I think you're going to be able to do this a lot more justice than I could.
Yeah, for sure. So I got a call in early February from the city of Chestermere asking me if I could give them a hand. They were having some difficulty, some challenges getting their intercity transit service set up, and they had a project lead there who was obviously very invested in moving the project forward, but they were having some challenges with structure and accounting for all the deliverables and making sure that they got everything done on time. And so they gave me a call. They said, hey, we need somebody to help provide some support and help bring the parties together, bridge the divide, and see if we can, keep this thing moving. And eventually, as I came along, it was quite interesting to see that there was a lot of goodwill between the two cities. There was a lot of work that was being done, but the pace, or perhaps some of the challenges, were proving a little bit difficult to overcome. And so what I did in the beginning was essentially develop a list of deliverables, a matrix of deliverables that essentially accounted for several streams, the financial, the communications, the basic service agreement, enforcement, and so on and so forth. And so by outlining clearly all of those parameters and identifying the deliverables and the responsibilities between the two cities, it was quite striking how quickly things began to move really, really fast. And so, we went through multiple iterations of reviewing enforcement agreements and the transit service agreement. We went through multiple iterations of figuring out a budget. A budget had not been developed prior to my arrival. And so that was actually one of the first things that I did, develop a budget for things like, for example, the bus stops and, a new traffic signal and other things that would be required just for the infrastructure of the service, as well as the service itself, administrative costs, maintaining the website, producing tickets, things like that. And so it was really interesting to see that this project, being a little bit off the beaten path of just, building something, it was a very different project with its own set of challenges. But mostly, I think, speaking to our previous episodes where we talked about communication, I think there was a need to clarify the expectations on both sides. And that's where I was able to help the city of Chestermere, who was my main client, to really get all of that going. And we were working with an amazing team of people. We had an excellent traffic consultant. We had a wonderful finance person, as well as, a lot of really talented people on the Calgary side. So just by bringing a little bit of structure to the table, it was easy to go from, moving at, 20, 30 miles per hour to moving like at 100 miles an hour. Right. And it was very helpful to see that all this goodwill could come together in a way that was coherent. And in the end, again, one of those interesting situations where the schedule was critical. The service was intended to launch on August 30th, and we finished the last stop on August 27th, on the weekend just before August 30th. And wow, it was interesting because on that particular instance, we had some issues procuring a contractor, and
Yeah.
so what I did was, through some of the relationships that I had, I brought contractors and other parties to the table that could help execute with certainty to the schedule that was required. And that service obviously launched on time, and it was hugely successful, and it is being used to this day. So very excited to see that we were able to make a positive contribution to the launch of the intercity transit service between the city of Chestermere and city of Calgary.
I love that. I can almost picture you going in there with your book and being like, here, read chapter 1.
Yeah.
Right? It's right
We'll
in
love
there.
next Thursday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's amazing, right? You're coming in to do, in this case, a transportation job. But really, the challenging part was the people problem, right?
Very much so.
Opportunity.
People opportunity. There you go. Right?
Yes. Yeah, and we were very lucky in the sense that there was total commitment from the leadership of both cities.
Yeah.
So it was just literally a little bit of structure and a little bit of help in the right places in order to get it past the finish line. It took, since February all the way to August. And in fact, we are still completing some infrastructure that was not schedule critical, but it was very helpful for us to see the commitment from the leadership of both cities. And in fact, I attended the launch of the service with Mayor Nancy and Mayor Chalmers at the time. And it was a really fun event. Yeah. In fact, I think the work that we did led to a number of other projects with the municipality where we have been also very successful. And it's been, again, the development of a very positive relationship for us. We love to building relationships with all of our clients, because at the end of the day, whenever you have a positive relationship with a client, it's because you have given them something of value, and obviously, in return, they give you the business, right?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I had a brief stint in construction management, and from what I saw and the people that kind of came and went, it was kind of the reverse. Very, very technically competent, right? Could talk about concrete or window wall or whatever, all day, but struggled on the administration or the diplomacy side or the contracts administration or whatever, right? And that's, at the end of the day, that stuff kind of floats over here, and then the project's getting close to completion, and now it's paperwork time or finances or, heaven forbid, litigation or whatever, right? So,
well, with some of these complex projects too, you need to educate yourself first before you can go in and, help the client too. So there's a lot of behind the scenes research and knowledge building that can happen as we're going along with each new type of project too.
right.
Well, it's kind of what we were speaking about earlier before we started filming, which is, you want to make sure that when you're presenting something or you're talking about something, you've researched it, because if you lose credibility with the client, then trust is really hard to gain throughout the relationship, right? But if you go in and you understand what it is you have to do, you've done the research behind it, you can talk the talk and walk the walk, and then that trust comes sooner, and that relationship that is so important to your company and your client starts to become just so much easier to build and maintain. So I think that's really important, because I think too many people might be out there and they kind of shotgun it. They're like, I kind of know this, and and some clients will be like, oh, that's cool, but some clients might be like, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and you want to be prepared for that. You don't want to be that guy, right? That's like, I don't really know. So
you've got a really good story about that, about industrial engineering.
Yes.
Or learning.
Yeah, I started my career in buildings, and then I made a transition into dealing with industrial process industries. And so I worked for an oil and gas operator, and then I worked for an engineering contractor that did mostly work for oil and gas and mining and so on. And then I ended up working for an oil by rail operator. And then after that, I went back to do some building work, as well as continuing with some industrial stuff. But throughout that entire process, something that I've always been very keen on is, if I don't know something, I want to at least become myself conversant with it and become familiar with what the topics are about. And as I started to make my transition from buildings into industrial engineering, I learned that I didn't know a lot of things that are absolutely critical, and I became hugely safety conscious, which is a critical value for all of the process industries. And in that process, I read probably about between 25 and 30 books on safety and plant design and project controls and
As one does.
piping and maintenance and all kinds of other things. I attended courses. I learned from very, seasoned construction professionals, including, a very good boss that I had when I was working for a very large engineering firm out of the States. So I literally had to suck up a whole bunch of knowledge just to become good at my job when I was working in process industries, and when I was doing oil by rail, the same thing. So one of the things that I really like is that use of the knowledge, right? And I'm also a big proponent of sharing that knowledge with other people, which is the reason that I wrote the book. That it's mostly based on my own experiences, but it does give many people, whether they are beginners or seasoned professionals, a really good insight into how projects should be managed. But in the process of writing that, I also had to read a whole bunch of additional materials. So I'm big into self-learning and self-teaching a bunch of things. And if there's something that I don't know, whether it's electrical engineering or architecture or building envelope or some process, for desulfurization of sour gas or something like that, I'm gonna go and read about it and educate myself so that we can provide an appropriate service to our client, right? And I think to your point, you were mentioning something really interesting, which is having answers to the questions, and that's definitely critical, but also I think has to do with asking the right questions. And if you know the right materials, you can ask the right questions of the experts that are part of your team and get better answers than if you didn't know about the subject matter. And so it's been an interesting journey for sure. Okay. Starting in buildings, going into industrial, now doing a bunch of other work. And it's been very productive as well, in the sense that we have had some of the very complex jobs that we talked about earlier. Those I have used a lot of knowledge that I gathered from the process industries, because in some instances you're dealing with systems that cannot even be shut down, right? Like you have to, repair a cooling system for an IT data center that powers an entire campus of a university, but you can't shut it down. Right. How do you do that? Well, you go to the process industries where they know how to do those kinds of things. And then you use that knowledge, you leverage it, and you transport it into this new setting, and you apply it successfully. And that was, interestingly, one of the smallest jobs that I've done. I think it was under $100,000. But the risk to have the entire IT communications hub shut down was in the order of millions, for sure. Wow. And the fact that we were able to complete that successfully without any incidents and without loss of communications, I think was, a testament to the value of knowledge and applying it from different settings.
So chapter 2 of your book, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm super keen to hear more about what you have coming next, which is what we're going to talk about on the next episode, because I feel like you've kind of been everywhere and everything. You've done so many things. So, I'm super excited next time to talk about, what books are on your coffee table at home right now. So, but in the meantime, how does somebody want to get a hold of the best in the business?
For sure. You can reach us by our website at www.mexsig.ca. That's MEXSIG.ca. Or you can reach us by phone at my cell, 587-830-1371, or at the office, that would be 587-437-1371.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.